The College Planning Edge. Multiply your odds of getting into your dream college and get your hands on thousands of dollars of fat, juicy scholarships. Brought to you by Lockwood College Prep, helping college-bound families get the edge in college admissions, financial aid, scholarships, and test prep.
All right, welcome to the College Planning Edge. This is Andy Lockwood, and this podcast is all about helping stressed out parents not only get into college or help their kids get into their dream colleges, but also how to pay and how to be successful post-college. And that third component is what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be focusing on today because I am lucky enough and I'm very excited about my special guest interview, Chris Jones, who is not only a great friend of mine, but also a very well-regarded and successful financial planner. He's been in financial planning for 29 years and all sorts of clients and experiences, and a very interesting guy. And Chris also teaches a class to high school kids at the parochial school where his kids actually went to, local here on Long Island. And what we're going to be doing today is sort of summarizing, but Q&A style, a lot of the life financial lessons that are called the 4 steps of financial security that Chris teaches in this class, because I think it's just so important to be able to give this information to kids as they embark on their careers either before or after college. So, Chris, thanks a lot for joining us. How are you doing?
My pleasure. Thank you, Andy.
Where are you joining us from, by the way? Are you local or are you up in Vermont or something?
I am actually at my place in Vermont, but it's
nice.
about -5 outside today, so there's no skiing going on.
Okay. All right. So thanks anyway. I'm not sure what else you'd be doing, but thanks for helping us out and giving this information. Every time, the title of your forthcoming book is The 4 Steps to Financial Security, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So Chris and I have been talking about this book. I've been, helping him a little bit with it, and every time we talk about it, the information is so important that I've been saying probably for more than a year, we have to make this either a webinar or you've got to teach this as a class to my clients. So today is really an attempt to fulfill that that goal for me. So thanks again. You ready?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I am.
Okay. So give me a little bit of background first, just in terms of just so people know, sort of your practice and your credentials, and then
okay.
How you happen to get to create this class, because that's an interesting story also.
Okay, thank you. I will. My background, I started in financial services when I was actually 25 years old. I was working with individuals and families, really doing basic financial planning. And then over the 28 years in the financial services industry, I've worked at every level. I ran a very large firm for a number of years, and then about 13 years ago, I went back into just personal practice, working one-on-one with families, and that's when my children joined and started attending this parochial school. And I got to know the head of the school very well. And as we always had conversations about what about setting up education around things that people actually will use for the rest of their life. And I'm not knocking anything from education, math and science and everything else, but I'm saying, practical knowledge like speed reading and then, speed math. And one of the topics that I had brought up with the head of the school was just around basic finance. Just understanding, we spend our entire life going to school up until the age of 21, between elementary school and high school and college. And so at 21, we're out in the real world, and why did we go through all those years of school? So that we could get a job. Why did we get a job? So we can make money. Why do we want to make money? So that we can do things, have things, and kind of create the life we want to live. But when you look at that 16 years of education that we get in the school system, how many hours on the topic of money do we get from an education standpoint? And I looked at my own, and it was approximately zero. Or if every so often I run into schools that do have some sort of consumer economics class But it really teaches people how to be good consumers, not how to win the financial game of life. And I think they're dramatically different.
Yeah, I think you win the financial game of life by being kind of a lousy consumer, maybe,
Yeah.
or an educated, frugal consumer.
We define winning. This is how you know you won the financial game of life. When the money that your money is making more money than you need, you won.
Yeah, that is great. But yes, I should just warn everyone listening to this. Chris has a gazillion of these little Chrisisms that we call them, Jonesisms, and they're worth writing down. So hopefully people who are listening have this, have some ready utensils with them, because I always walk away thinking, wow, those are good writer downers. You have a list somewhere, right? Did you ever? Is that going to go in the book?
Some of them are in the book. A lot of them are accumulated for something in the future. I just don't know what yet.
Okay. All right. Good. That's a form of savings. So let's talk about just give an overview. What are the 4 steps of how to win the financial game of life according to Chris Jones, and then let's dive down on the first one after you go through all 4.
Okay. So the reason let me just step back make one brief point. The reason I broke it down into 4 steps is when I first was offered the opportunity to teach at the high school, I had 1 hour of these kids' lives, and they did some prep work before I got into the class, and then they did some follow-up, but I had 1 hour in a presentation. So I had to break down how to win the financial game of life into steps that they could take away and learn, own, and take away in a matter of 1 hour of their life. So that's why I really broke it down into 4. The first one is, live on less than you make. I use percentages, live on 70% of your net income. But the key is really live on less than you make, because sometimes people don't even know. So that's step 1. Step 2 is tie 10% or tie the percentage. I just believe that what I've observed in working with so many people over the years is when they're givers and they give away money as part of their overall financial well-being, they have a better relationship with their money. When you turn all of your money into just serving you, it distorts your relationship a little bit. So I've found that if you can have some component of giving away, making a difference in the community, you'll have a healthier relationship with your money. This third one is save 10%. And I'll definitely go into that in more detail, but you got to save, you got to pay yourself first. And then the last one is insure with 10%. Things happen in life. We live in a broken world. Bad things happen to good people, and that insurance is really to handle and address when those bad things happen, so that your life doesn't implode because something unexpected happened. So the
Great.
4 steps.
Yeah. All right. That's great. I'm sure, just like every time we talk about this stuff, I'm sure anyone listening, their wheels are probably starting to turn with questions like, how am I going to do that? Or what's the point? Okay, so I know we're going to get into those. I'm going to try to ask as many of those questions also, because I have them too. But let's start with the first one, step 1, spending less. So that seems like such an obvious one, and I think a lot of times ideas are very obvious, but the execution is where people fall flat on, right? So can we talk about this?
Well, nobody has a better opportunity to spend less than they make than somebody who's about to go into college. You're really designing your life for the future, so you can design what your finances are going to be for the future. You know what your job's going to be, what you think your job's going to be. You know what your income's going to be, and then you know what expenses you're going to have, or how you want to design your life. So, many times kids get out of college, they haven't really done the numbers on what that college loan is really going to cost them. What I encourage them to do this first process is literally do 2 things. One is called an income statement, which is all your income, all your expenses, and then start to have a balance sheet, which is a list of your assets and liabilities. The income statement's all that matters when you're graduating from college. What's your rent going to be? What are you going to pay for food? What are you going to pay in taxes? What are you going to pay for health insurance? You start to design all of that, and then you look at the job you're going to get, and the 2 might not always match up. Actually, frequently they don't. But the further ahead you can start to see that, the better ability you're going to have into designing the life you want to live. So it's kind of the tail wagging the dog. If you ignore it, then the money's going to rule you for your life. So you might as well plan out ahead of time and really look at, can I afford to take $70,000 in student loans? And if you say, well, I just want to get that college degree, but if your job is only going to pay $30,000 a year, it's not going to work, and you're going to be financially behind for the next 20 years. And I've met people who have lived under that weight, and it's just not healthy.
I have these conversations all the time. It's rare for a week to go by where I don't have this type of conversation with someone along the lines of I have a client of mine who's a very high-paid surgeon. He's some sort of mouth, oral surgeon, and he hires people he's also a professor, and he hires kids who are coming out of dental school he had one kid he hired who has $700,000 worth of loans, and he might be making $300,000 in income, which is of course a lot, but he's living in the city. He's got all those expenses, and I just think it's that's an extreme example. But I think that what you're saying about doing the numbers, I think most kids won't do that. Most parents won't do that, and the problem is that if you're not, like you said, if you're not honest about it, and you understand, you're not putting accurate numbers in, and you're not disciplining yourself to understand what these numbers. And it's very simple, right? I mean, either if you have enough, you have enough, and if you don't, you don't. No amount of wishing is going to make it any better. If you don't do that, then it's a recipe for disaster.
Right. I literally provide a budget sheet, a budget worksheet to the high school students and say, write your budget out. Let's talk about it, but write your budget out for what you think your budget's going to be. Let's say 6 months after you graduate. So let's assume you get the job you hope you got, and now what else have you done? What other financial obligations do you have in your life? So you have your income, and now you have your expense. And if now I've got $100,000 in student loans, 6 months in one day, you have to start feeding those loans. Okay, there's $1,000 a month that's disappearing. Okay, what else? Well, I'd like to have a car. Well, you want to have a new car or a used car? And you do all the numbers, you go, wait a second, I don't have enough money left over to eat, or forget about moving out of the house. That's not going to happen. But at least they're addressing it and looking at it 4 or 5 years into the future, as opposed to looking at it in the moment when they have to deal with it. So
yeah, so you talk to the kids in your class in high school as they're contemplating or maybe about to start thinking about going to college. This applies really to anyone though who's in the middle of college, right, or other phases of their lives.
It really does. It really does. It's just, listen, right now we live in a very different world than we did when I went to college. When I went to college, you couldn't borrow your way. Maybe my parents could borrow a little bit of money or pay a little bit of money. I worked full time the entire time I went to school, and you just couldn't get yourself into kind of debt you can get yourself into today. Now they literally throw money at you to go to college. You just couldn't do that 30 years ago.
College wasn't expensive either. Yeah, and it was
right.
Yeah, it was hard to rack up that type of debt. Because it was probably underwritten more strictly. Also, the loans that were out there, and now there's very little underwriting. You can just even after the crisis, 2008.
They will let a student borrow themselves into oblivion, and with no accountability for what they're going to do and what their compensation is going to be after when they start working. So, listen, we have to be a responsible consumer as opposed to somebody who just takes the money and runs, because we're going to have that obligation. It's going to become a day to pay.
Yeah. So getting back just to drill down a little bit more on the spend less concept. So you have certain percentage targets, and I know you mentioned that for some of the other steps also. But how important are those percentages?
Well, the percent, the live on 70%. It's fairly important. You have to live on less than you make. You have the saving is extremely important, that you save 10% of your income from the day you start working. But just even the concept of living on less than you make, not taking on consumer debt in any way. I mean, you take on short-term consumer debt, but not taking what should be short-term debt and turning it into long-term debt. You wind up spending so much money on interest payments, you're really foregoing what you could have later on. So what we do with the budget worksheet that we have is it literally shows you, here's a rough percentage of average of how much of your income should go towards housing, how much should go towards car, how much should go towards gas and clothing and other things. And so if you stay within those percentages, you can get to the living on 70%. The benefit of that is you have extra money. And as I've told my kids from elementary school, get ahead young. If you get ahead young, it makes life much easier. If you fall behind young, it makes life much harder. So, before you have any obligations, design your life so that you're getting ahead young.
All right, great. That's you know what would be great is if I could, if you wouldn't mind, if I could post your budget worksheet in the show notes of this episode on my site. Would you mind sending that to me so I could put that up?
Yeah, I will do that.
Okay, great. So, and for anyone listening, if you want, we'll give out Chris's contact information afterward, just in case you want some more help from him, not just with this stuff, but with anything regarding financial planning. Okay, so step 2 is tithe 10% or give away 10%. Talk about that one.
Right. I started doing this class in a religious parochial school. And so I could quote from the Bible certain quotes that I use whenever I'm talking about tithing. The basic concept of tithing, to tithe means 1/10. I've learned in life it's more about having a component of your life and of your money that is directed towards improving the world outside of you, which ultimately improves your own world. The benefit is psychologically, and this is true of very high net worth families and moderate income families, that if they have a component that is for is for giving away money, they just have a healthier relationship with their money overall. I can't explain it. I've never seen anybody give themselves into poverty. I just know that when they're improving the world around them, they're improving their own world, and their overall relationship with what they have is better. So it's an observation. It's not scientific. And it is.
I think it's sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, based on my religion, it's what I'm called to do as part of my faith. But I think it's just a truth in life that you'll have a better relationship with money if you improve the world around you.
Yeah, so I am not like Chris. Chris is very Chris reads the Bible every day, but you're definitely not like you're not one of these born again guys who's always trying to convert people or whatever. I'm Jewish. I'm very a-religious, if that's even a word. My observation is that this is I think my theory is that the reason that why I think it feels good to give, or the reason it helps you have a better relationship with your money, it just feels good to do something to help make the world a better place, without getting too sappy about it. It's I think it's a psychological thing also. I mean, I don't know what the answer is either, why it works, or based on Chris's experience, he's got his opinions. My opinion is that whenever I do something if that's to help other people, I feel great. And same thing with our kids. And I think this is just it's related to that a lot. So I think it's great.
Right, and I found it's not about the percentage necessarily. The percentage is something that we each make our own decision of what the percentage is. It's more just that you have that component in your overall financial philosophy, if you want to say it that way.
And there's plenty of people, both religious and not religious, who swear that once they started giving money away, they made more. And I don't know if there could be a bunch of explanations. Most are probably not really rational or scientific the way we understand rationality or science to be. But I've just heard that so many times, and I've experienced it at certain times in my life too. So I don't think it should be overlooked at all. I think it's good, and I'm glad it's one of your steps. All right, so let's talk about step 3, which is saving, and you put 10%, right? But talk about that.
And this is not, so the 10% here is not flexible. If you save $1 a day for 40 years at 15% interest, that's $1 million. And it's not that anybody can get 15% interest for 40 years. It's more the power of long-term savings and compound interest. If you start saving 10% of what you make from the day you graduate college and get your first job until age 65 or really 60, and you don't touch that money, you just let it grow and you invest it, which we talk about how to invest in the book, but there's lots of books out there on how to invest. But when you're young, you're more aggressive, and as you get older, you get a little bit less aggressive. But if you invest it aggressively when you're young, you will have more than enough money to retire off of when you're 62 or 65 years old. But that will not be a problem. It's the discipline of saving the 10%. So if you can take the phrase we use in our practice is, if you can take 10% of your money and send it to the future you, send it out into the future so that when you get there, it's there waiting for you, and it's grown tenfold over what you started with, that's pretty powerful. So you have to save. I know with my own children, in lieu of when they lived at home, I said, as long as you put 10% in your 401k, there's no rent. You don't put 10% in your 401k, you're paying it to me, and I'm not giving it back to you. So it was 100% tax if they didn't put it into the 401k. But it's amazing how quickly it starts to accumulate, and then compound interest, when the money that your money is making more money than you need, you won. And that's really what's going on there as you let that money continue to grow, and now the interest on the money is growing. You won't be able to, you'll be shocked at how quickly it accumulates to something real. So saving 10% is not enough. You have to start saving 10%. If you wait until you're 35 to start saving for retirement, you got to start at like 15%. And so,
all right, so let me ask you a few questions. So when you say percentage, you mean pre-tax or post-tax?
Well, because you can save it all pre-tax, if you are making $35,000 a year when you graduate high school or college, $3,500 goes into your 401k. And on top of that, many times the company is matching the first 5%. So if you're putting in $3,500, they might be putting in $1,000. That's an immediate 30% return on your money. You never leave that on the table if your company's giving you that money, giving you that match.
Okay.
So it would be pre-tax.
Okay. And what about, I know this is probably a little bit more in the book, but what about, it sounds like you're talking primarily about stocks and bonds and mutual funds and all that. What about other investments like real estate?
I talk about all of it. Real estate, you typically need a little bit more money to start to jump in. So you have to accumulate some wealth before you can start to buy properties, that type of thing. I don't have a bias towards one investment solution or another. I think the one rule I have is, whatever you do, understand if you don't understand it, don't do it. So make sure you fully understand the risks associated with what you're doing. With real estate, you make all your money when you buy. If you buy right, you almost can't lose money. If you buy wrong, you almost can't make money. So It's all about getting the deal on the front end. So, I don't have a bias against any specific investment solution. If it's in your 401k, you're limited to mutual funds, which are basically stocks and bonds, and might be commodities and other things that are all in that mutual fund package that you have available to you.
So just so I can kind of rephrase it and say in my own words the way I understand it, it sounds like what you're saying is you advocate everyone putting 100% into Bitcoin?
No, I can say unequivocally no.
Okay.
And that goes to if you don't understand, don't do it. If somebody could explain Bitcoin to me in a simple fashion where I could really understand it, I would say jump in. But if you were lucky enough to get into it at the beginning, you've made a fortune. I didn't understand it at the beginning, so.
I'm no investment expert, but I always feel like when you hear like your Uber driver talking about it, and all these people that are not investment professionals talking about it, that's usually not a good sign.
It's time to run. Yeah.
Right. But you used to hear that about mortgages. You used to hear that. I mean, there's in our lifetimes, there's been a few of those types of bubbles, and you could probably go back to the Dutch tulip.
Right. Well, there's a saying in the investment world that says the market will stay irrational longer than most people can stay patient. So it's market's an irrational measurement. Over a very long period of time, it's very rational, and pricing is very on target. But over short periods of time, it's not about logic. It's about emotion.
I think everything's about emotion, it seems like. And I think that these rules are really, in a way, your rules are in a way designed to help you guard against emotional stuff, sort obstacles, and have a real plan, which I think is, and the fact that it's only 4 components means that like everyone can understand it, and the genius is in the simplicity.
Yeah, and we talk about don't chase bright shiny objects. Like if you do this, it's about doing consistent things over a very long period of time. You'll win the financial game of life. You can certainly get lucky with some other things or get opportunities that might present themselves that you take advantage of that turn out to be windfalls. That's awesome when that happens. It's just you can't depend on it.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's also a saying, right? Don't invest something that you're not afraid that you can lose. And I think and when I read about the Bitcoin phrase, which is currently happening as we record this, there's articles about people who max out credit cards, and computer programmer guys in New York City who racked up $35,000 worth of debt to buy Bitcoin at $19,000, and it dropped to $13,000. So it's like nuts to me when I hear about stuff like that.
It's outside my risk tolerance.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so step 4 is insure. So talk about how important that is, because I think that gets overlooked by a lot of people.
Yeah, insurance is very simple. It's just insurance is, thank God it's available, because if it weren't, we wouldn't be able to do things that we could do because we know we have insurance. So insurance is just you're offloading a risk that you can't carry on your own shoulders. When we talk about, you got to have car insurance. If you have a car, you have to have homeowner's insurance if you have a home and you have a mortgage. You have health insurance, which is required or not required depending on what's going on with the current law, but either way, having health insurance is an intelligent decision. A critical insurance that we talk about is disability insurance. One of the first things that a graduating student should look at is just something to guarantee that their income continues even if they become sick or injured and unable to work. How many of them want to move back in with their parents once they've earned the right to move on their own? So why not lock in, guarantee your income even if something unexpected occurs? Life insurance is something that, as you get people that depend on you and that you care about, life insurance is there to replace what you're providing them if, God forbid, the worst happens. So what we say with insurance is just look at it, we provide kind of a view of a pyramid that shows the different types of insurance that you should at least consider. And it's really just transferring risk to a third party that you can't carry on your own shoulders. I would take an intentional view of it. There are reasons why you buy life insurance when you're young, but it's a critical part of your overall financial well-being. Without insurance, if something happens, it doesn't take long for you to deplete savings if your ability to work is hurt for a year. You have a real severe injury and it takes a year to recover and you can't work and you don't have disability insurance, you might take 10 years of savings and blow it in that 1 year of recovery.
Yeah, especially I always hear about older seniors who don't have long-term care and they have a stroke or something else that's debilitative, and exactly that happens. They all the assets they work their butts off to accumulate their whole lives just go in like a year.
Right. Exactly.
But you're saying even when you're young, which that makes a lot of sense to me. I'd never even thought of this. Right out of college, it makes sense, and I imagine it's relatively inexpensive.
It's very inexpensive, and as your income goes up, you can increase the coverage. But I always ask, someone who's graduated 2-3 years ago, like you graduated, you're finally living on your own, something happened, you break your leg, really bad, and you're 6 months out of work because you can't commute and you can't move, you can't really get around the city, for example. Do you have something that guarantees your income? How long could you stay in that apartment in the city if your income stops? Most of them, it's 30 days. Like, okay, so the only alternative is moving back in with your parents. If you could guarantee that your income would continue, and that you might choose to move back in your parents, but it wasn't required, would you want that option? And so, for a minimal amount of money to have that option, I just think it's a wise decision to make.
Yeah, that's great. That's an eye-opener for me. Okay, good. All right, so those are the 4 steps. I now have what I want to refer to as 3 lightning round questions that I want to blindside you with. Are you up for that?
Go for it.
All right. You're sitting down? Okay.
Yeah.
So to put you on the spot with lightning round question number 1. What do you think is the biggest mistake that people make in this financial game of life? And that could be, let's narrow it down. Let's talk about people around our age, in their 40s and 50s.
Bad debt. Just, I see the biggest mistake people make is living a lifestyle that is above what they really can afford to live. And so you live at the edge from a financial standpoint. You don't have savings. You can't weather through emergencies. And as I said before, unfortunately, we live in a broken world and bad things happen to good people. So it's not, when those things happen, either you can handle them or you can't. And, they do happen. So I just see people living right up to the edge of their income as opposed to living below their means.
And the debt drags on that, of course.
And the debt drags on it and just steals the money from the future. You're paying the bank rather than paying yourself. So.
Yeah, well, so my office is now in. You've been there a couple times in Glenwood Landing, right near Glenhead, and every other building in Glenhead is like a Long Island, or National Bank of Long Island, or another bank building. There's a reason why the banks in every city, the biggest buildings are owned by the banks. I think it's because of all the interest
definitely.
They're paid. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Lightning round question number 2. And we've talked about this, but I think this is really, really great. So your kids are now, I guess your youngest one is now in college, but when they were younger and they needed money, and they came to you for money, what do you tell them? What did you tell them?
I never really did allowance. We had had jobs that needed to be done. I used the leaves as an example. I could pay the long guy to do the leaves, or I could pay the kids to do the leaves. So much per bag. My one son, middle son, he wound up getting a job pretty quickly, went into 16 locally, and it was just I didn't solve that problem every time they just needed money. They were part of solving the problem, and that's the way it's going to be when they're out on their own in the world as well. So
would you have like little negotiations each time for the bags or whatever jobs need to be done?
No, we just set a price.
Yeah.
And we'd say, yep, I did it, and okay.
Yeah.
Gladly. I was going to spend it one way or the other.
Yeah. One of my favorite criticisms that you told me, I'm not sure I'm going to get it right, but you said that when you were growing up and you saw, and it was snowing, you saw that as an income opportunity.
Well, we when we were kids, going to my parents or going to my dad for money, we got 3 things back. What do you think money grows on trees? Do you think I'm made of money? Do you think I have a money machine down in the basement? Yeah. So I knew the script. So by the time I was 12 and my brother was 10, a snowstorm was a money-making opportunity. We'd grab the shovels and we'd go out and compete with all the other kids in the neighborhood, shovel whatever driveways we could shovel, and then by about noon, 1 o'clock, all the driveways were done. But it was a huge money-making opportunity, and we'd have, we'd see a neighbor's lawn was getting long. We'd go knock on the door and say, "Do you want me to mow your lawn?" and make money or deliver. Like, it wasn't hard to make money. It was just we just looked for opportunities to make money. And as I tell people, we were kind of embedded. We became entrepreneurs as a result of that.
Nice. That's so cool. All right, final question before we wrap up here. What's your advice to people with kids? With parents with college-bound kids who started late in the process. They didn't start saving right out of college, and a lot of the stuff that you talked about today geared more toward younger kids. It doesn't really apply. So what can they do?
Everybody can take a step back if they can't. When I've sat down with people that weren't spending less than they were making, everything starts with a plan. So you start with a snapshot. Your income statement. You list all of your income on one side, on the left side, all of your expenses on the right side. What does it say at the bottom? If income is greater than expense, okay, that's the right answer. Now you look at the asset sheet, which is your assets and liabilities, your balance sheet. And so you just work on it as you move forward. What can I do to reduce expenses? What can I do to increase income? If you have a financial problem, there's only four moves you can make. You can increase income, if possible. You can decrease expenses, if possible. You can sell assets, which is never desirable, or you can take on new liabilities, which is never desirable. So, you only have four moves you can make. Which one would you rather make? I'd rather increase income or decrease expense if possible. I'd always rather solve the problem on the income statement rather than the balance sheet.
And I will say, from personal experience, even though this is incredibly painful frequently, it's worth doing because it's even worse living in the dark and just kind of kicking the can down the road. So Congress might be able to do stuff like that, but we as individuals can't. Right? Congress can promise benefits that we can't afford, but each of us should not be in that same business.
Exactly. Well, they have a bank that will issue them unlimited credit. We don't.
Right. It's more debasing of the coins that has been going on since the Roman Empire when soldiers came home. I'll see that stopping anytime soon. The soldiers came home, they wanted benefits, and no one wanted to pay for them.
Unfortunately, it's human nature.
Yeah. All right. Well, understanding it is the first step. So this was great. Yep. This could have easily been a 4-hour thing. How do people contact you? I guess phone number is probably the best way if they want some more information.
Phone number is 516-682-3379. And do you want email address too?
It's up to you.
Or is phone best? Yeah. The email address is really simple, CJOBNY, just for Chris Jones, Oyster Bay, New York, @mac.com.
So Chris, his client base is generally high net worth individuals. He also does a lot of corporate benefit type stuff, particularly with board members and all that. But if you have any financial planning questions, he's got someone on his team that can probably help, especially if you're trying to win this financial game of life. So 516-682-3379 and CJOBNY, as in Chris Jones, Oyster Bay, New York, @mac.com. And keep an eye out on Amazon for the forthcoming book, Four Steps to Winning the Financial Game of Life? Tell me, I forgot.
4 Steps to Financial Security. Yep.
4 Steps to Financial Security. Good. Okay. Which I won't ask you when that's going to be done, but I know you're in the final stages.
It's in graphic stage right now.
Good.
The editing done.
Yeah. It's been edited. That's cool. Okay, good. So I'm excited for that too. So, all right, great. Thanks again, Chris. This was great. I think it's invaluable advice. Thanks for spending your vacation time with us. Stay warm.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we'll see you in the new year.
Yeah, Happy New Year for everyone, unless you're listening to this after the New Year. But for more information, everything is on our podcast, The College Planning Edge. And Chris is by the time you hear this, I will have a copy of the budget sheet posted there on the site. You can go to collegeplanningedge.com and Chris's information as well if you want to get in touch with him. So have a great New Year, everyone, and win the financial game of life starting in 2018 if you haven't started already. All right. Bye, Chris.
Thanks so much, Andy. Take care.
Hi, this is Andy Lockwood. Don't forget to visit our website, lockwoodcollegeprep.com, for some more free, valuable information on how you can multiply your chances of admission to your dream colleges and qualify for thousands or tens of thousands of dollars of fat, juicy scholarships along the way. Visit lockwoodcollegeprep.com for information on our free upcoming workshops and webinars, and to download a copy of our #1 best-selling book, How to Pay Wholesale for College. That's lockwoodcollegeprep.com. Bye-bye.